Welcome to the Arts to Hearts podcast, a show for artists, creators, creative entrepreneurs to have heartfelt conversations about living a creative life and a career. As you go into this show, hear your favorite creators talk about money, mindset, business, creativity, and everything else that goes behind into making a life that we all adore as an artist. Hear the messy and the wonderful side of being a creative. I am your host, Charika Arora, an artist, creator, and founder of Arts to Hearts project. Thank you for joining me here. Let's jump right in. Hi guys, welcome to Arts to Hearts podcast.
Hi. Hi. Nice that you are having us. Thank you so much.
No, I'm very looking forward to having you guys. Before, as much as this conversation is, I'm looking forward to knowing you guys because I also know very little. I did my own research, but I've been following your Instagram account for a couple of months now, and what I was really interested in, because I've never had someone from Nepal. I have no clue how the art scene is in Nepal, and because it's a Southeast Asian country, what we're doing in India, it feels very close to home. And I'm really looking forward to learning more about what's happening, what you guys doing, what Kaalo is, what your individual journeys are. But before we get into all of that, why don't you guys introduce yourself, who you are, and what you do?
Okay, I'm Helena. I'm the co-founder of Kaalo.101. I'm in Nepal now since 8 years and
Wow.
recently got the Nepali citizenship, which is like fantastic. I come more from an academic background. I studied actually up to my PhD art theory.
Wow.
So I come more from a place like of very theoretical and methodologies and looking at art like more from that perspective. And I think it was before I came to Nepal less like connected to the practice in itself. I would say it was very much in the university context. But yeah, since I'm here and we started Kaalo.1, of course, that changed a lot. And I left like the ivory tower eventually and decided to commit to something more important, which I'm doing hopefully now.
Okay, tell me something. Why Nepal? What brought you to Nepal, and where were you before Nepal then?
So after I finished my schooling, actually, I left pretty fast to Southeast Asia and was working there for the people of the ethical treatment of animals, PETA, also commonly known. And from there, I moved to
That's even
London.
more interesting.
And from there, I moved to London and worked as a journalist in an agency. And actually, it was boulevard journalism, which was really so. I was writing about Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie and these kind of people at that time. And then I wondered, like, if this really was already everything what my life has to offer to me, to stand at red carpets and interview people. So I went back to Germany because education, of course, is for free. So I went back and was like, okay, now I'll study. I was living with a lot of artists in warehouses in London. So kind of that inspired me to look more into this kind of part of society, part of culture, part of life. And then I stayed there. And in my bachelor, I was pretty fortunate to get a small prize for my research. And that allowed me to travel around the world, basically to find a research topic for my first master and then PhD. And I was in Japan before. Yeah, I was in Japan.
So you've seen a lot of things before you ended up here.
Yeah, and I mean, to be honest, like I came to Nepal very randomly. No, I mean, I didn't plan anything that this could be a space for my research. It was just in South Asia, it was visa free. It was very easy to enter the country. I had no clue like what this place is about.
And you never heard about it, never thought like, okay, this is something, it could be into something or anything.
No. But like then I got tattooed here, of course. And I met really amazing people. I mean, I think the scene that I got connected with, like kind of pretty fast, I understood that it's a different vibe than in Germany and in Europe. And, I was working.
So interesting to hear.
And to be honest, in university, we talk a lot about post-colonial studies, critical whiteness, and all of these things, but it wasn't, I mean, it's just theory, no? Like you speak about it in a
Yeah,
very, of
definitely.
course, wide space, no?
Yeah.
But here, kind of the negotiation with that and the discourse was very different, no? And I think that kind of grounded me also very strongly to be like, what am I doing, no? Like, I shouldn't be in university, I should be in the practice and commit to movements,
Yeah.
basically.
Okay. So what about you, Stuti?
Hi, so I'm Stuti. So I got involved with Kaalo after I returned from the States. It was during a mentorship. It was called facilitation. No, I'm gonna mess it up, aren't I? It was movement restriction and space. And then after that, I did another mentorship with Kaalo. It was facilitating and like curating spaces. And
Oh
through that,
wow.
I
So you
got
were
involved.
basically with you were doing this mentorship with Carlo.
Yeah, yeah. So Kaalo initiated the mentorship, and they brought in mentors from like different fields of life, different disciplines, and through that, I got connected to like how do you facilitate a space, how do you combine like art with writing, and through that, I founded a library called Matangi Library, which is housed right next to Kaalo. And so because of that,
Okay.
we've been working very closely together as well. My
Yeah.
journey, I mean, aside from that, I'm actually from like an environmental background. So I
Oh
majored in
wow.
biology, like did soil science, worked in recycling. Now I'm working in agriculture. So a lot of
Oh my goodness.
sustainability. So yeah, so that's where I am coming from. But at the same time, like there's this big library that I'm also really trying to build, really trying to like get the word across on literature as much as art with Galo.
That's so amazing. I remember I read about that you had three spaces. Definitely one that you've mentioned was the library, and other two old Pathan style spaces that you'd converted into. I really want to talk about that, but let's also can you take me back where how Carlo actually happened? Because like Helena, you said that you came here, and then what next? Like you find yourself, like you find it interesting, and then what you think about something, and like how did that happen?
Yeah, it was, I mean, no, it was a lot of great, fortunate coincidences. Actually, I was doing my research in a tattoo studio here. And one day, like this guy came in, wanted to have a full sleeve tattoo, and my friend said, the other manager was like, "Hey, this guy is like the street artist, no, the Sadhu X, no." And then kind of, like, of course, because we are like a very, I mean, it's a village, no, Kathmandu is very small, so
Yeah.
we kind of met again and again, and I went to an exhibition and saw his work. I was like, fantastic. It was like, I mean, stencils mainly. And then we kind of got more and more connected, started talking, started hanging out. And then we were like, look, we both have in the end no space to meet other people, meet other artists, exhibit artworks that are kind of our understanding or our passion of art, like that are a bit more politically inclined, where there's no censorship in a space, where kind of curation and the white cube is a bit questioned also, basically building a community of artists, right? Without having this very monetary focus. And basically what happened then, we were like, okay, we're looking for a space to live also, and we're like, okay, no, we cannot afford it like in the very new part of town, but in the old city we really love the space here because also there's a very existing local community that is still very committed to traditions, religious practice, conserving the heritage around us. And we were like, that's a perfect space. At that time the rents were still affordable in this area, so we found a house with other friends. We walked around before that. In every shop, is there a house to rent, like, and so on.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's how we started. And in the beginning, it was just, I think, five of us. It was Aditya, Sadhu
So
X,
basically, you
me.
came together. Was it like that?
Yeah,
Like you came together, pitched in,
exactly.
took a space so that you all
Yeah,
could work together. Like you created your own
exactly.
co-working.
Exactly. It was more, we put works on the wall. We didn't know, is it a co-working? Is it a living? Is it a gallery? No, like we just went with the flow. No, we hung pieces on the walls. We invited people. We were working there. We were living there, everything under one roof. Otherwise, we could not have afforded it too. If we would have separated living and working, that would not have been
Absolutely.
possible.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. So how long ago was that? What year was that?
Oh my lord. That's like, I think 2016.
Okay.
So it's a while.
Yeah.
It's 6 year running.
Wow.
And yeah, it has been growing. No, like that's the amazing thing. We had a opening party, basically a party, where we just invited our friends, and a lot of people came, and then more and more artists were like, "Oh, can I hang my works too? Can I do something too? Oh, I would like to do this." No, like so that way, it kind of grew, but kind of very organically, like not really how we
Pushing.
imagined
Yeah.
it to be. Yeah, yeah. Other people were pushing like certain agendas, like it
Yeah.
turned out to be turning more political actually than it was in the very beginning, because especially I felt like my ideology should not be put upon people, and they should act
Yeah.
accordingly. But that's kind of happened naturally, so that was very, very nice. Like,
What was the art scene and what is the art scene in Nepal right now? I'm really interested in knowing like what what is it? I have no clue. I haven't been to Nepal even though like I've heard Kathmandu is really gorgeous and beautiful.
yeah.
And there's a lot of people who show here as well. A lot of I've seen artists from Kathmandu who've shown in India. So
Mm.
I'm definitely, I mean, looking at you guys and the work that we see here, that definitely means there are a lot of artists and there is a creative community. But what is it like? Why don't you guys tell us?
So the art scene in Nepal, I think, I mean, it's a very global phenomena that the arts are a very elitist thing, no? Like, I mean,
Absolutely. I think that's an
so
idea that we're
like
constantly being sold, but that's not true.
so like what I feel like we are actually, I think, working more on the end with activists and other people, young people. I think we're less connected to established art institutions, and I think because I mean, my personal wish is to be as accessible as possible, so that means
Love
to be a
that.
lot in public spaces, no,
Yeah.
not to be restricted in our space only, no, because of course, even though we try, it's accessible to a certain kind of crowd, no, like. And I think the art scene in Nepal, yeah, is very highbrow type, like it's very, based on caste privilege, on wealth, on, of course, if you're from Kathmandu or outside of the valley, then usually the galleries, they look exactly like they would look in the West. It's basically a white cube. No,
Okay.
and I mean, us moving into a traditional building was a bit also to counter that, because we were
Yes.
like, look, we should exhibit art in a space that kind of resonates more with people, that resonates more with the architecture.
Yeah.
Like,
I love that.
so I think it's everywhere the same. Once we talk about established artists and people who work professionally and full time as artists, that's often a very, like small circle that has a certain privilege, that
Yeah.
comes.
Also, I think the definition, at least that's in my own personal experience, what I've seen is that um, when I came into the arts, I realized, okay, this was there was this only one idea that I was being told or that I saw probably was that this is how you can become a professional artist or a working artist.
No.
And also, I think the validation that came from it was like, when you're showing your work in a white cubicle, like, I think it was like, for me, it felt like a very big mismatch because as creatives, as creators, our primary goal is to create and express. And when you're given
Mm.
like like a structure that okay, this is how you get to do it, this is who you are, this is how it's done. Like ideas like you're not if you're in your studio most of the time, then you're not a serious artist, or if you're doing too much of like really old school thoughts versus what I think with like us two hearts, I'm seeing you guys in Nepal, Visionary, create like all these platforms like you who are creating alternative ways of being an artist, and just not being like artists in the sense of like you sit in your studio, but also using real life skills. Like today, artists are teaching other artists, or artists are aware about how to run a business, or um, social media, or community, or like real life skills. And I think that when I saw wasn't really like it wasn't there. This like I feel like we're all creating like an alternate way, which is ideally not alternate, but I feel like for the timing I'm going to just use that word. But another way to show all of us, like there's a possibility like you could still be an artist and have a parallel job. You can still be an art, and it's not going to make you less or more. Or I think when I saw your face, I love that. Like I think this is something that I really like because it tells a story, like our heritage. I come from India, and my personal work as an artist, or who I am, especially, also has a lot of influence from my culture and heritage, and I think it adds so many layers. It's just not showing the work on a white wall. It's about you tell your story. And I think even as anyone who runs a platform, we are always trying to tell our stories. I think it's just a creative process in different form.
No, yeah, I absolutely agree because if you're going to like you talked about like what the art scene looks like and what Kalo is doing is obviously what you said, right? Like bringing up a platform for artists to express themselves freely, more freely than like it would if it was commercial art, because I've seen that happen. And also like who are we creating, like who are artists creating that commercial art for, like who is actually buying that, who is viewing that, and it's not really the local people, right? And because of that, like I
Absolutely.
think and because of that, like something that came to mind when you were talking about like artists expressing themselves. So we recently had the Riot exhibition, and all the six pieces of work, like the painting, there was also projections, but like the paintings, all the artists were very true to themselves and they expressed themselves truly, and that's something that really jumped out to me.
Yeah.
Their stories were so deep, like, and that made the artwork so intricate, so personal, and that's not something you really see, right, when you're like
Yeah.
looking at a commercial art space. Because it's not really, of course you're trying to create a story, but what kind of story and who is that story catering to? It's not usually for the artist, right? It's for maybe somebody who's actually
Absolutely.
trying to maybe going to like
Yeah, and
buy it or something.
I think there needs to be a space for all of us. We all make very like
Yeah, for
all
sure.
kinds of work.
Yeah.
Someone makes decorative, someone may make political, and even not even as an artist. I
Yeah.
feel like for example, for me, my work has transitioned a lot in the past couple of years because I personally have had so many major life moments. I lost my mother, constantly, and that affects impacts you as an artist. What you want to say, um, and everybody will have a very different story, and I feel like we all need to understand that all our stories are as important as any other. We all have the right to be in that space. And I think a lot of in the beginning, I think a lot of artists feel like from people I've interviewed, like, we have this constant pressure that you have to say something serious, or you have to say something valuable to be taken seriously. Like, if like there's a particular style, a particular way that you need to weigh yourself, only then you can be taken into like serious accountability.
And I think, there's another element to that in Nepal that never came across to me as much in other places. I mean, especially in Germany, is this idea of creating Nepali art. No,
Oh,
like what is like Nepali art? No, like there's a very tough stronghold about how Nepali art should look, like what kind of content it should have,
oh
and like
wow.
often artists we work with, they are being told, oh, you're not creating Nepali art, you're copying something from the West, especially in street art. But this comes from people that exhibit their work so lately in these white cubes, and like kind of also come very from this very educational, Western discourse. And they don't look really into local practices. Like, there's so much work on walls, like all over the city, right? So there is a very strong connection of contemporary street art and tradition in Nepal. Like Stuti wrote
Yeah.
recently an article about like wall paintings in Lomantang,
Oh
religious
wow.
for religious devotion usually. And so, like I think that is a very big problem in Nepal, this Nepaliness. No, if you would be in Germany, like being like, oh, I create German art, then everybody would think you're a fascist or nationalist, right? In
That
Nepal, this is a kind of legitimization. No, you're Nepali enough, you're creating like kind of deities, bells like this. But
yeah.
I think this is so limiting for young artists, no? Because
Yes.
of course we're in a transcultural society. Nepal is not an isolated space. I think it's time to acknowledge, that transculturation is like the future, like and I mean, of course I would say that because I also moved to Nepal, like but I feel
Yeah,
also as
definitely.
Nepali,
Yeah. But have you been to India?
mm,
You
yeah,
have?
I've been to
You'll
India,
see
not
quite,
much.
but you'll see a little bit of the same ideology here as well, honestly. A little bit. I mean, not so like, I think that is something that I think probably, I don't know the reason why, but I do relate to what you're saying. Okay, tell me, Stuti, you, do you also come from the Kathmandu?
Yeah, I do. Born and
Okay.
raised Kathmandu.
Okay. So you
Yes.
moved to the US, you did all of these things, and then you came back. And
Yes.
also for you, Helena, how did I'm sure like from traveling the world and for you being in the US, you've been exposed to like all sorts of things, and like we all know like there's a huge difference in the, not particularly in the art scene but in general also. How does how was that for you? This cultural difference in perspective, mindsets, like how I what's your opinion on that?
So for me, I am not really an artist. I wouldn't say that. I just dribble some, like, doodle sometimes. But I did really like going to the museums there. And of course, there's like, firstly, there's this big gap, like, and Helena touched on this as well, about like this art needing to be Nepali, and it's not as contemporary here. So if you go to like our art exhibitions, it's usually like very,
I've seen
really,
those.
yeah, religion centric, or it's very much tied into like this Nepali, like, but not just Nepali, but like mostly like high caste, like, patriarchal notions of like, what art should be or will look like. But when I went to the States, obviously I went to like different types of museums, and there I really did see like personal expression in art that I hadn't seen back home at that time, because I went when I was 18, so I was young as well. But when I came back, like, of course there was again lots of symbolism, like religious symbolism in art, or cultural symbolism in art. But with Kaalo, I saw that that was kind of shifting, especially for younger people, because here they do get a very traditional training as well. I mean, I don't know if it's changed now, but like, I don't know if like, I mean, maybe Helena can say more about that. Like, what are the younger artists learning in universities and schools, and what are they, bringing out to the world? Um, but yeah, with Kaalo, then I saw like, okay, there is this shift towards like artists actually expressing themselves freely, like very much experimenting as well, not just with their art, but with themselves as well. Like, what do they actually like, right? What kind of materials do they want to work with? Like, is there something more than just, a canvas in front of them? Like, I know Carlo has done a lot of work with like resin and like sculpture, clay, like all of that as well. So yeah, I did see a big divide. But with Carlo, like, I think that gap is narrowing, which is great to see.
So, I mean, I think for me it's three things. Like, one thing is like Oh, of course, people believe there is no opportunity for artists in Nepal. I see that a bit differently because I really believe it's because it's so small, everybody knows everybody. And if
Yeah,
somebody is really good, you
yeah,
can kind of get access and be able to exhibit or find a space that would be interested to exhibit you and support you. And second thing is, I think also like, I mean, in Germany, when you talk about cultural heritage, I don't know even what that is, right? So like, I think contemporary artists here have a chance to feed off and learn very much from people and
yeah,
professionals working in the heritage. And that's like
yeah,
in very much in proximity to where they live, like
Mm,
there's a big connection to that. But like when I came here, like, so these were very positive things, no, that kind of resonated with me. But something that I figured is like in the West you have very strong counter movements to institutionalized forms of arts,
yeah,
like so people, like who question the white cube, who question like the colonial
mm,
energy, that comes with all of that, that question the art market in Nepal. There's not really a lot of people questioning that, and I think
mm,
because people maybe don't see the options yet, there's not a strong movement, for example, calling out people if a gallery keeps exhibiting abusers or predators. Let's call them predators because that's what they are. Or there are a lot of people, very questionable people in institutions, educational institutions. They are not being called out, no, and that's something in other places you would less likely to encounter, no,
yeah,
like I think in India the Me Too movement was also pretty big. In
yeah.
Nepal not really, because
Really?
then again, yeah, it's like a small, it's a small, there's a lot of dependency and there are a lot of power
mm,
dynamics, and I think it's very hard to counter certain people in
Yeah,
positions of power,
yeah. I
right?
think
And
that's also a small thing, and like there's always a good and a bad to both. When you're in a smaller space, everybody knows everybody,
mm,
so the access to like
yeah.
when you have something to say, it can reach to a wider audience. But the con is that when you really have something to say that is not in alignment with what people want to hear, that becomes a
Mm,
problem.
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, like people, the way like other art institutions, they said about us, like we're dark, alternative, and underground, or like our
Oh my
focus is just
goodness!
working with queer people, or like we're always
Even if it is,
anti,
I think it's an
like
illusion.
too
Mm,
opinionated. And I'm like, look, like I mean, these are mostly people that have never entered the space because, of course, they are not really interested, no. And like I mean, me personally, I stopped going to most of the other institutions because I cannot tolerate looking at exhibitions of predators. Where
Yeah,
everybody knows. I have a very hard time, like kind of overseeing this. No,
yeah,
like so I think yeah, we're kind of not removed from the art community because of course I know them and we have a friendly
yeah,
connection, but we don't collaborate,
yeah,
especially me, because kind of they give us always this label of young struggling artists.
yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, we're young, maybe in comparison, but struggling, I don't know, like some yes, some no, no?
But I think I think what I find very interesting um, is that let's say 10 years ago, or maybe a couple of years ago also, like there was only this one kind of community. And not I
Mm,
didn't feel represented about that. I didn't feel belong to it. Um, and there will be like there needs to be alternate like there needs to be several spaces for all kinds of belongingness. What you may feel connected and what you want for yourself, I may not want that, and that's completely fine. We all need to coexist as long as people, I think, like if we don't have more and more representation and people create what we're all looking for, it's very hard for us to fit in this one box that very I think the upcoming generations are finding it very hard to connect to, or
mm,
if they're keeping up. I see this is something I've seen in the West a lot. I think even with the traditional white cubes, like a lot of people have started, and I think that's particularly in small businesses, small gallery owners, young gallery owners who may be in the traditional, but they are changing the way that they're looking at things. They're becoming more approachable. They're becoming more experimental, more inclusive, which is a great step. I think, like, all these initiatives need to, like, happen from all ends, because ultimately it's going to benefit. I think the traditional system was the one that was benefiting artists the least, and we need to constantly, like, build this ecosystem for artists, because ultimately they are the source of everything and anything that's happening right now.
Exactly, exactly. And I think, it's also fine to acknowledge difference and be like, okay, we cannot collaborate, but we can still be friendly with each other and polite, right?
Yeah,
Doesn't
yeah,
have to be always like this aggressive relation, no?
yeah.
Like,
And I think
but
that's
yeah,
also
I
art.
mean,
Like, we all
yeah,
have different
exactly,
opinions. We still accept. We
exactly.
may not appreciate, but you accept the existence of each other and you move ahead. Stiti, tell me something. What about how has the library come to life? And what is I want to understand how do you guys work together? What is a typical Kalu working? Like, take us deeper. Let's talk about the library, then we'll talk about you guys and how are you collaborating? How do you work together? Because I see a great energy between you two as well.
Thanks. So with the library, it started December 2021, so end of 2021. And before that, it housed some art books through the mobile library, Napal, which is like just a rotating library that has like a lot of books on art. So now it's actually in like the central university here in Kathmandu. But like before that, like we had that, and then I just had this idea because likewise with art, like even literature is quite inaccessible here, right? Like for people, especially like those maybe reading English literature. And I grew up in a house full of books, and I didn't realize what a big privilege that was until like I started talking to people, and like just the fact that people had to buy books in order to read them. There wasn't really like a robust library. So that made me, take this mentorship with Kaalo actually, and it was like about curation, like how do you facilitate a space, how do you build a community, right? And through that, like I created this the Matangi library, and so this was very recent at Riot, and I think it worked really well. Is that we would have artwork, and there was like a small pop up library with Black Books Distro as well, which is an anarchist like library book info shop which is also located in Lalitpur in Patan near where we are. And so, you had people interacting with the art space, like you had people interacting with the books. And I think it just creates like a really nice, like collaborative environment for people just to sit down and, just to creative people are creative in so many different ways, right? Some people prefer writing, some people prefer, art, music, and all of that coming together. I think that's really coming along well. And I think that's how it works. Like in this exhibition we did in the abandoned space, like we had the library, then we had obviously the artwork, the projections, and at the end of the day we would have like these musical like performances.
Oh, wow. You guys sound way more fun than I imagined.
The amazing thing is, it was all in an abandoned space. So we went in that space like 2 months before the exhibition, and we cleaned it up. It was completely trashed,
Wow.
and it was just an empty standing
Goodness.
little warehouse. And that really changes the whole calculation of accessibility, because
Yes.
you actually bring up the energy to bring your work to a space where people have not, seen this kind of event, right? And so how the neighbors respond is like, they're like, oh, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? Who are you? What does that mean?
Yeah,
Why this?
absolutely.
And you kind of reflect the whole time, no, then about your own work also. How do you explain? Of course I can like explain every artwork in a very intellectual, very
Yeah,
elaborate way, but that's not how you explain works to people that just come by and are
yeah,
like, what is that, like
yeah.
what does riot mean? The exhibition was called Riot.
Oh my
So
goodness.
how do you explain the idea of a riot to people that come from a kind of post-civil war
Yeah,
conscience, and without them being like, oh, like, so okay, it's that kind of thing, and we're like, no, it's like about yourself, also about your personal rights, how you express yourself, no, and these are the conversations that I think are really fruitful, because
yeah,
then I really feel we're making an effort. We're not expecting people to come, but we are coming towards them. No, so
Yeah.
we had one exhibition also. Stuti was part of that under the Bagmati Bridge that connects Kathmandu and Lalitpur, and that's like a space where people go and pee. They walk there towards the work. It's like at the river, and the river is in a terrible condition, of course. So yeah, kind of you force the elite, the art elite, to these kind of spaces. One, no, but also
Yeah.
like there is a lot of people passing these artworks, and we never put like statements, so everybody makes their
Their
own
own
like
story.
thoughts about this. People destroy it, which I really encourage too if they feel like doing that, because it's a communication, no. But usually we remove art from any form of communication in the white cube, no, because why is it a white
Yeah.
cube? Just to have it very neutral, no,
Yeah.
nothingness. It kind of removes everything from the context, from
Yeah.
the city, from the people, no, and nobody can touch it. No, I think that's the
Yeah.
amazing thing about public art. People kind
Art.
of feel
Yeah.
entitled to go to it and kind of change it even or destroy it or do whatever with it, no?
You know what is even more interesting? Not only audience, but I think on the flip side, as an artist, what I feel like, because I've never had this, and it's even like, even the thought of it is giving me chills. Like, I think as artists we become so attached to what we make, and and I think with the white cube, it's this. Oh, it becomes very. It also attaches to your ego, and like it. Yeah, like you become. Oh, it's so precious, and like this and that, and the moment someone you make your art, and anybody who has the communication, your relationship with your viewer is such that if they want, they can destroy it, trash it. It makes you like it. I think it grounds you. I'm just thinking about it now and just reflecting. Like, it'll ground you in such a different way. Your relationship with your work changes so much, and I think it'll give you. I think the white cube, or like the traditional formats, like the more serious you become, like you more seriously you start to take yourself, the more afraid you become of what you want to say. Versus when you already know that whatever you're going to say may be discarded, you'd rather say what you have to say than just keep it to yourself.
To be honest, I think, the white cube and the art market too, they give the artist as the author a lot of power, and that's the power of truth, right? You are inscribing with your statement a certain, this is the way, what it means, this is what it is, no? But to be honest, I think, the author should be removed from the artworks first of all, like, because we, for example, we never use kind of labels, no, in our gallery too. It's like, first of all, people can ask, of course, who is this work? Like, like, what's the context? That's fine. But first of all, look at an art piece without 2 A4 pages of statement, right? Because that is so much like implication of power, like, and that is not what art should be. The potential of art is everybody can look at it, make their own meaning out of it, make their own context, see it from their personal background, positionality, whatever it is, no. And I think that's how art should be used, and not be like, oh, it's a kind of social cultural capital, that only we have in our hands, and then we share it with the world however we see it fit, no. um, no, it's like, I think, and that's what the problem of the art market and all these galleries is, no? Like, they kind of course, who wants to give up power, no?
Yeah.
But then everybody loves talking about decolonizing the arts, no? I mean, what is decolonizing in the white cube? That's, I would really like to know, no? Like, of the documenta, also the Triennale here, what does decolonization mean in this context, no?
Yeah. That's very interesting. And I think, like I said, I think these are all experiences we all need to like. These are questions that we need to keep asking ourselves, and how we all individually want to react and like contribute to that whole narrative. Because ultimately, I think if we all work in the same alignment and in the same direction, it's not benefit of one, but I think it's a benefit for all. And especially, I think for long time artists, I think artists should always have the choice how they want to represent their work at the end of the day. I think artists should have always have that power, which they've not really had in quite some time. And I think with social media, a lot of things have changed. It's giving artists the power of saying what they want, doing what they want, experimenting, and also having direct feedback of what they're making.
I think, there's a difference. If you have an artist of course, my marginalized communities, people that don't get the standing of deciding who they are, yes, 100%. I will
Yeah,
not impact how their work is presented and how they want that. If a white cis male comes towards me and it's like, oh, I want this is, I don't give them that space. I have
yeah,
to be very sorry. Then I believe then an artist has kind of go into this reflection process maybe with other people too and think about that, because
yeah,
subconsciously of course we reproduce structures that are beneficial to us,
yeah,
like, but then let's kind of think about that in other cases, as I said, marginalized communities, of course, because they don't get any of this space
yes,
and any of the saying in these institutions, right? So then
yeah,
it changes. But I think if you come from power, if you come from privilege, you should be ready to question yourself and challenge the ways how you want your work to be presented, like
yes,
in
yes.
terms of accessibility, in terms of self-reflection and all of that.
I love that you like. I think these are very, very important things that not only Nepal, but I think in all parts of the world. Like I said, a Kaalo needs to be there, and like the Gorilla Girls, if they wouldn't have been here, like we all play such an important role to make a better future, and we all need those challenges. We all need to create spaces to have those conversations that are that are not monitored, that and also platforms that are targeting a specific audience so that they are uplifted because they need that support that has not been given to them forever. And it is our duties, it is our responsibility to play that part.
I mean, you see pretty well what happens, no? If, for example, in the documenta, no, or like all these incidents with the party office and with other people, what happens if the white cube takes this label of decolonizing and involves people they are not ready and not capable of facilitating in a post-fascist, still fascist Germany, right? Where people, like, I mean, like this whole Israel Palestine context, like then that completely failed, like,
Yeah,
and I think it would have been a different thing if, of course, the curatorial work would have been a different one, if there would have been different communication, different form of facilitation, no? So it's very difficult to change. Always people say, oh, but I should work with them because I can change the institution. No, you will not change the institution. The institution is so strong, that is built on white supremacy, that is built on exclusion. You will not change that. So rather make your own space, no? From the
yeah,
ground, from
yeah,
ground zero, no?
yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
it's not a fact,
You have to be change makers, you have to take those risks. And I think I do agree to this point. Sometimes if you don't feel resonated, um, you have no choice but to create something for yourself because it's not there, and you have to take it upon yourself to create something that does not represent you. But I think very few
Mm.
find themselves. The more courage we all put up together, like to just to create what's missing, I think we'll all have so much more capacity to find ourselves and like challenge ourselves and work and all of those things, I think.
Yeah, I think, like for us, already to believe in power of community instead of authority and leadership, and to believe in kind of relations based on trust rather than relations based on fear and this kind of dependency, I think
That's
that's for humans already a big shift, to do.
yeah,
But I think if we manage that, then we're like, oh, like I can rent a house with 10 friends together. I can put up some
yeah,
artworks. I can make cool shit. I don't need, like this
yeah,
established institution necessarily,
yeah. Okay, tell me something. What does like how you guys work together? How are you like Carlo and the library? What is a typical? What are you doing outside of Carlo's? Like how? Just one last bit before we get into the rapid fire.
So I am, well, I don't know where to start with that question. So the library, so yeah, so there's the library, of course, and with that, like, what I mean, there's so many points that you guys have been talking about. I've been listening, and it's like there's so much that you can do with a library. that firstly involves like breaking that bubble, right? Because what kind of people are coming to the library? Like, how do I make it more inclusive? How do I kind of like burst that bubble and make sure that people have access to that library? And then that's when you reach out to Kaalo, you reach out to like you try to do these art exhibitions like that Kaalo has been doing. Like you kind of hop on that bandwagon and do a pop-up library, just to spread the word across. So that's one. Another is like there is a but you said in the beginning when you were doing your introduction actually that there's been a lot of gatekeeping in your side of town and like in your art community as well, and that's true for art communities in Kathmandu as well as like the literature community, right? Like
Yeah,
who is
yeah,
giving like who is publishing books, like what voices are they bringing out there, who are they bringing to the forefront, like, and then who is facilitating spaces, who's curating those spaces. And that's something that you want to think about. You want to make sure again that you're reaching out to as
yeah,
many people as
absolutely.
possible and not just a select few, because obviously it's easy, right? Like in that sense, because you have like your own friend circle, you have that echo chamber. It's all fun, but what is it actually bringing about any change in the art or in the literature community? And that's something you need to think about. um, so yeah, so that's something that I rack my brains about. But other than that, like I'm mostly like
Oh,
running
wow.
around doing other things as well.
That's so nice.
But yeah, I also write when I have the time, which is hardly any these days. But yeah, so like yeah, so the hope is that Kano and Matangi Library can collaborate with those like public spaces a lot more, because we had an internal talk as well, like with other people in the community, like in the art community, in the politics, you know, different like in the left community here, that what are we actually doing, something that can we do more than what we are
Yeah,
doing, right? And that's something that we're constantly asking ourselves.
absolutely.
So I'm sure like
I'm sure.
Riot was just another, like it's a step up a ladder, which hopefully the ladder will be for everyone eventually.
I think the day we start asking ourselves, like, I think just how we can do better than what we're doing today, I think that's more than a wonderful start. Like, just keeping at it, I think that gets us through so many things that we can't even imagine.
Something I've appreciated about like Helena and Kalu is that even when starting the library, I think like maybe whoever's listening in, right, like if you do want to start something, it can be like really small, right? Like the focus isn't on like, because what we think about like the art community, like the literature community, I think it's like a little bastardized when it reaches like Nepal or India, because we think very grand, very lofty, like those white, these grand libraries.
Yeah, there's certain kind of shame. I think that's what I think Helena, when you guys mentioned the abandoned space. I think this is something that I've seen a lot with my friends in the Europe, in
Yeah.
the US, where they actually there's no inhibition. There's also not any social inhibition that if they pick up a space, people wouldn't come trash their space or like or,
Yeah,
call the police or like things like social
yeah,
structure also like that. But I don't think like in India it would take a lot more
yeah,
courage to go into like, or maybe I've never done that, so
yeah,
I
for
don't have
sure.
that. But because the societal structure is such that I'm sure, like Helena mentioned, like the exhibition that you put, it would have taken a lot more courage because the way it was titled, it will like it triggers people and like then you're picking up a space. And I think Southeast Asia countries like they're very responding to their situations. Like the moment they start feeling unsafe, a lot of trouble comes your way. So I think, which is something that I've not seen in a lot of spaces in the West, where people just pick up a space and they don't feel like they'll trigger someone. Like, and more of this needs
Mm,
to happen because that way, like, that's how
mm,
accessibility and expression is expanding more than anything else.
But it's exactly that. I mean, when we go in a space,
Yeah,
it is a
exactly.
very long process of communication with the neighbors and making them feel safe, actually, like because there is like hundreds of people coming over a weekend. And, like, I mean, we clean up every evening, after the event, like the cigarette butts, we don't let the
Yeah,
people go towards the neighbors too much, like, so it's, like, based on a lot of respect, we're not
yeah,
taking their water when we're not allowed to, all of these kind of things. And that gives them also the kind of thought, like, oh, these
I think
these
this
people,
is
I mean, they have tattoos and they look kind of weird or whatever, but they are proper, they know how to behave in our neighborhood and they respect our private space, and I think that changes the whole calculation.
Yeah, and also I think like the thing you mentioned, a lot of people, especially in the Southeast Asia, we are also very judgmental on the way people look, perception of artists or perception of anyone who's doing a responding or revolting or having like some kind of opinion that's not a mass opinion. So like these are very common attributes that scare people away, and they feel
So even with like the library, right? Like in these spaces, like I feel like people are hesitant to clean up at first, right? Because it's like, what are we doing here, right? Like it's not something like it's that idea that you have to literally create your own space that can then accommodate you, right? And I think that's like a very valuable lesson for any person starting out something. Like you can like, you know, some days you do need to get down and dirty and like put that effort in, and like that's something that I think slowly when people start putting that the work, like the actual work in those spaces, they do feel more responsible, like more responsibility towards it. And I think like even with that abandoned space, like I wasn't there all the time, but when I was there, like it was like, okay, this is like a collective effort to like make sure that we're creating a space from scratch for people to come in, and it's not just like something that Kaalo does or I do. It's like we're bringing people together, and I think that's a very powerful message in and of itself. And you're right, like in South Asian cultures, like in Nepal, like maybe some people have grown up with
yes,
maids.
they
That's
don't get,
probably
yes,
not very prevalent in the West. Like
yeah,
even the act of
right,
cleaning itself, people do get very hesitant. It's
yeah,
like a social like corrupt structure like thought that we get.
yeah,
So even that fact is like, okay, everybody's equal here. Everybody puts in that work,
yeah.
and everybody gets that satisfaction of like having done that work and put that effort in.
I think what for me, I think my biggest derogative with like arts to arts has always been like what I saw prominently here in India and around my surroundings was like a lot of time people were with this artists around me were with this idea that they needed to be picked, they needed to be helped, they needed to be given a platform, anything and everything they needed to be given. And I came from a very like I came from design and tech, and I'd done a lot of things. I'd started business, closed them. I never believed in all those things, and I was always at the mindset that if I need something, and I'm completely opposite. Like if I need something, my first instinct is how do I create it instead of like going to someone. And I saw like this was such a something that was holding back so many people, where people don't have ownership of their own lives and their own careers. The moment artists, like anyone, not even artists, just we understand, okay, this is if I want to be here, I take hold of who I am, what I want to be, get my hands dirty, make those mistakes, and finally I'll find something, rather than keep waiting for someone to come, validate, dictate, and tell me who I have to become. I think this, like, and it's those small changes. You put up an exhibition, you clean that, organize that, market it, put it up, get those nails. Like, it really gives you a sense of purpose. Like, I have done this, I've made this possible.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, to see that happening, I mean, I think we were 15 people in the team for this one. And to see this happening is for me the most powerful thing. Like how people take ownership and how responsible they feel, and everything is fantastic, no? So I think for me, like this really, like we did two other abandoned spaces before the whole pandemic
Yeah.
schism happened. Um, but I think now, like, I mean, so lately I want to do new exhibitions and events outside of these walls, like, and for me, it's like, we have now like a residency South Asian, it's a South Asian collaboration between Bangladesh, India, Pakistan, Nepal, and the UK diaspora. So 20 people will come in September. So we'll also make concerts in public spaces. And then we'll have, and the next one is like four European artists collaborating with four Nepali artists on a massive wall. And we'll also do an exhibition in shutter spaces, these shop spaces.
And you should also check out someone I think you will really like is a Ravli project. You'll see it on India Art Fair. Like they've been doing a great work with transgender people. They built a community. Oh God, I love what they're doing. Amazing work.
Yeah, they're amazing. And I mean, for us, like also like because the place where we are located, it's like turning out to be okay. We're always talking about decentralizing the arts, but what's happening actually now in Nepal is everybody's moving to Patan. So I think we have to bid our farewell to Patan sooner or
Yeah.
later and remove ourselves from this calculation and go to spaces in the city where there is no representation of the arts, because we have done a lot of work in the streets here and that's fantastic. I loved my time here, but I think now we have to
Wow.
make the move. And we got a small land like outside of the valley, and I mean, I want to build
Yeah. So
something there that's more going towards co-living, and then have a space for the gallery, basically, let's say in proximity to the city, because
yeah.
I don't think we should be. I mean, I love Patan. Patan is wonderful, no? But now, with all the art institutions moving here, I'm like, what's the purpose of us being here actually still? Because there's so many people doing art, no? For us, it will be also interesting. It will be a new community. It will be a new neighborhood. There are so many ugly walls that need to be painted and abandoned spaces to be cleaned. And I think
You really inspired me to come to Kathmandu and Nepal now.
yeah. I mean, Kathmandu, I think the biggest, like what I figure, especially in the residencies and now especially in the South Asian residencies, that people from Pakistan and India can meet in this space without any problem, no? And I think that is in the South Asian comparison, Nepal is maybe one of the most liberal and progressive spaces. No, and that's why, I mean, as you said, no, in India it might not be so easy to go to an independent, like abandoned space and take it on, like with all this party politics and nationalism going on there. We have that too.
Yeah. But they'll bear you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
No, but here it's kind of possible, no? Like, and through communication, not everybody will love you, but people will let you be, no?
I think this tolerance, I think in the past 1 and 2 years in India, the idea of tolerance has been a very big point. Because
Everywhere in
in,
the world. I mean, look at Europe, it's like
yeah,
neo-fascism is on the rise, like it's a burned ground, no? And it's happening everywhere, like where leaders like Donald Trump can become, like even in South Asia, kind of
yeah, yeah.
like so like I mean, we have to counter that in a way and make our small bubbles also and comfort, create communities, care for each other, love art. It's so much more than art. It's not, art is there, and I love art, of course, but that's not the baseline of it. No, the baseline is I mean, I trust Stuti. I love to work with Stuti, like I respect and appreciate, that's the baseline. And then art comes in the calculation, and that's fantastic. No, but I mean, human relation is a bit more important, no, than putting a nice painting on the wall.
For me, I think art is all about relationships. There's nothing like I think I do this and I do the work that I do is because I think art is that common ground that unites me and makes me meet like people. I think it's this filter that I know that I can have this conversation that I will cherish for the rest of my life with someone because we have like a certain common interest that is just not art. It's like it's a filter that's like an art, but it gives you a deep. I think we've spoken for the first time, but I don't think we can have a conversation like this with anybody we meet. Like, you know,
Exactly.
I think that
Yeah.
what art unites, and it's not only art in the sense of painting. I think with Stuti, you're writing, and like I think I have a team that I am based out of India. I have some a team that works out of Pakistan, and I deeply resonately love that diversification and like how we can, irrespective of where we come from, who we are, we can unite on a common ground and find that collaboration and enjoy and cherish and celebrate. I think why do we have to see ourselves or like if we see ourselves as common interests all over the world, I think we can be such powerful allies.
Something that I've also realized because we've worked with so many young people, like young artists, young writers, young, musicians, is that a little bit of kindness goes a long way. Like for all these upcoming, artists across the board, Just because, I mean, just thinking about like our childhoods and how stifled we were, or like how it was very difficult to pursue something create like a creative field, right? And to see like, just people coming into the spaces that, like the library or like Kalo, and just telling, Helena, like, I feel heard, I feel respected, I feel welcome in this space that I may not otherwise. And I think that is also very important. Like that's one of the most important works that I think Kalo is doing, because I hear that a
Yeah,
lot from people coming in, right? Like, of course they like seeing the artwork, they really enjoyed that aspect of it as well. But just the fact that they have a safe space, with all the things that they struggle with, right? Like when you're younger, when you're trying to be an artist, when you may not have
yeah,
that support, but then having a space where you see like people like you thriving, and like imagining yourself as an artist, I think that's very important. And I think that's
yeah,
very, yeah, like it's very heart touching, like heartwarming to see that as well, for whoever comes in that space. And I think that's what we were talking about.
That's a fuel, no?
Yeah, exactly. The coal that keeps the fire burning.
yeah. Thank you, guys. This has been so good. I have had, I think it's been an hour. I don't even, like, it's gone so quick. But I have a rapid fire before I let you go. So what we'll do is, because we have two of you, I'll ask a question. Both of you have to be quick. Just give me what comes to your mind. Okay? Okay. One thing you want to convey through your work in the arts.
If you want to change anything, start everywhere.
What about you?
Yeah, so I think for me it's like kindness and empathy and listening to each other. I would love to have that.
Love that. That's wonderful. What's that one word that describes you the best?
uh, yeah, Kaalo. Anarchism.
For me, oh dear, this is a hard one. Why didn't I think about mine?
Quick,
Can I say vivacious?
anything. Bilkul, absolutely. Okay, if you could have a studio or a gallery space or a library, whatever your dream project is, anywhere in the world, where would it be?
Here.
You've
Yeah,
already got
that's
it.
true. Where else?
What
For
about you,
me,
Stuti?
I feel like everywhere. Is that a thing? Like a network everywhere. That'd be so cool.
Okay, your biggest source of inspiration.
The people around me.
Young people who come in and like get so excited about the books, and like they're talking about it. It's really, really cool.
Okay, if you were to meet younger Helena slash Stuti today, what advice would you give her?
It will be a lot of struggle, but you'll come to a place where you find your people who also struggled as much as you did, and you'll have a beautiful community.
For me, I think trust yourself. Don't dim your light for people that, yeah. I don't know. I feel like, yeah, I would definitely be like, trust yourself, have fun. Yeah, have a lot of fun before your back starts hurting of old age. Dance more, drink more. The hangovers are getting worse.
Okay, one last question. Shout out to an artist or a couple of more that you're currently loving on social media so that our community can also find that.
Oh my Lord, Satan. That's like very difficult. I cannot.
Oh, I love this question.
Uh,
Every time I go back, I list those artists and I'm like, oh my god, I found another set that I didn't know about. So I love this question.
like I'm in the wrong position to say one name, so I cannot do that. I give you a list of people and you put it.
You have anything?
I can tell you, like, definitely look at the works of Sato X. That's like the co-founder of Kaalo.101. I think fantastic work. I would also say
Okay.
only one. Okay, so of course, what to do?
Maybe I'll say somebody from the. Oh man, everybody was so good.
You can also mention a writer.
Oh, a writer.
if you have it.
No, I've just been reading a lot of
Anything of your own.
classics.
Hearts is gay white for me.
Uh, this is not a contemporary or a South Asian writer. Is that okay?
Anything. Anything. Oh
No, that's
yeah,
not okay.
contemporary. Yes, contemporary for sure.
Oh dear. Okay. I'm gonna give a shout out to my library. No, I'm just kidding. Uh, I'm really blanking here. I need to think. You can just I can record myself and then you can like add it in post production.
Okay, I will. So once Stuti gives me the artist, I will link her in the show notes or him and make sure you check out. So I will also know who that person is. I'm going to wait for this.
Actually, wait. I have like a couple of young writers that were like, I mean, maybe this will be a shout out for them.
Yes,
Like,
absolutely.
we have Songs of Revolution.
Okay.
This is a book that was curated by Ankit Khadki and Vijeta. And then we have Shitesh Thapa, who also came out with his poetry collection.
Wow.
So, yeah, shout out to
Yes.
them. Who else has written a book? Okay, I think that's all I remember. The
No
young
problem.
author. Oh, Prabhigyan Aryan, who's also a young writer, up and coming, Kathmandu writers. There you go.
Oh wow. Oh, I'm going to look all of them and link all of them in the show notes for all of us. Oh my god, thank you so much, guys. It was so fun knowing you. Also, like it's been a fresh breath of air to have this conversation. I really appreciate your honesty and thank you so much for sharing your work, your ideas, your thoughts with me. I really appreciate this.
Thank you. You're appreciated. Thank you for the work.
Thank you for having us. We appreciate you. Come visit soon. We'll be waiting.
Yes, absolutely. When you come down to India, you let me know.
Sure.
I don't leave this courtyard, you know.
I'm glued to the seat.
I pretty much have the same situation.
See.
Okay, tell me something. Before I let you go, I forgot. Where can people who are listening to this episode find you, support you, participate, all of that?
I think for me it's just Instagram. Kaalo.101 is like we publish everything there. People should reach out. You know, we're always welcoming residency artists too. Like anybody who wants to collaborate, anything, you know, just say hi and we'll be connected.
For me, that would be matangi.library. So matangi.library. And yeah, so if anybody's coming in from India, I'm always in need of books. Books you can't find in Nepal.
Don't carry your
Please
books.
reach out to
Come
me.
here.
But no, like if you're interested, actually, we do reading circles, we do workshops. So if you're interested, like we could also do like cross country reading circles and workshops. That's always a lot of fun.
Oh
Virtually,
wow, yes,
yeah. So yeah, if
definitely.
you want,
We are
like,
publishing two of our books. We're
oh,
also
that's
doing a
amazing.
magazine. So that will
That's
be fun.
amazing. So yeah, definitely follow us, send us a message, and keep in touch.
Thank you guys. I hope to see you soon again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, we will. Bye bye.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. You can find all the details and links mentioned in the show notes of this episode available on www.arts2heartsproject.com. And if you like this episode, please don't forget to tag us in your stories and leave us a review here on iTunes or any of your favorite platforms. It really helps us to keep the show going. Thank you so much and sending you lots of love, and I can't wait to be back here soon again. Bye.